Welcome to the Vinsmoke Benji channel. My name is Benji, and you guys smell that? That smells like a pack, baby. It smells like a pack. And I know it's not confirmed, of course. Yet LUCCI pulling up for a possible rematch against Luffy is actually kind of entertaining. Because Luffy right now in the story is him. But not getting ahead of myself, because LUCCI could very well have a brand new bag. But I digress. Before we go ahead and jump into this chapter review, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the Vinsmoke Benji channel. This is your one-stop shop for all One Piece content, as well as anime and manga content that I will be posting whenever I get around to editing that. So yeah. Also, go ahead and subscribe to the Geek Giant podcast channel. We recently recorded our first episode in a long hiatus. We have a ton of fun over there, me and the guys just talking about anime and manga. So go ahead and subscribe to the Geek Giant podcast channel. But no more wasting your time. Let's go ahead and begin with chapter 1068 of One Piece, A Genius's Dream. So to start, we get yet another cover page detailing the relationship between Judge and Caesar Clown. And like I said last time, they have beef. And Judge and Caesar Clown really seem to hate each other, but I do feel like they do have some kind of common place, and it comes in one person, and that is Vegapunk. And if you look really closely, you can actually see a thought bubble that's coming from both Judge and Caesar Clown, and it's with their days within Mads. Now, if you guys don't know, the Mads program was a program consisting of Judge, Caesar Clown, Queen, and the famous Vegapunk. And basically, once upon a time, they were all science partners. But Vegapunk became the most famous out of the four. The implications of this cover page itself kind of makes me think that we'll get a lot more of the Mads program a little bit later on in the story, and we may even see Judge and Caesar Clown make an appearance very soon. But also, from the looks of it, it looks like we won't be staying in Egghead Island for too long. And really quick side note, Soma and Party Pete, if you guys are watching this review, let's go ahead and renegotiate our bet. Please. I'm broke. I'm very broke, so yeah. Anyways, let's begin with the actual chapter. So we actually cut back to what happened last chapter with the CP0 agents not being able to gain entry into Egghead Island. We see Vegapunk number 4 communicating to LUCCI's group that the Seraphim Kuma that they borrowed can actually be returned on its own. And that due to the busy nature of work, they won't be able to greet them in person. Thank you for all of your work. LUCCI registers this and suspects that Vegapunk may have his suspicions about CP0's real mission. Kaku adds that it's been a long journey and can't they just pop in for tea? Yet that plea doesn't work. But LUCCI finally responds to Vegapunk number 4 and mentions that strange disappearances have happened to other CP members. And he says this: "Why hasn't a single government ship made it back after visiting you in the last 2 months?" Seemingly confused, Vegapunk number 4 says he can assure LUCCI that those vessels had departed from Egghead safely. Then Lilith, Vegapunk number 2, interjects her own opinion, getting upset that LUCCI would even accuse them of such a thing. But Vegapunk number 4 takes back control of the conversation and just reiterates to LUCCI's group that they still won't be able to gain entry into Egghead. Now really quick, the disappearances within the last 2 months, could this possibly allude to Vegapunk as well as the revolutionaries taking preparations for the things that are possible to happen, especially in this chapter? Or was this time set while the Straw Hats were in Wano? Could Vegapunk have already had his eye on Luffy and his group, preparing for this very moment in this chapter? But what do you guys think? But moving on, LUCCI, who obviously wasn't going to listen to that request since the CP0 members all have a mission in mind, and that is to eliminate Vegapunk. And LUCCI instructs the agents on board to prepare to abandon the ship. They will infiltrate Egghead using S-Bear's ability, or the Seraphim Kuma. Otherwise, the sea beast that Vegapunk has will destroy their vessel. So we briefly move back to Kamabaka Island, the current location of the revolutionaries. And we see Kuma running towards something like he was doing in last chapter. Leaving a trail of robotic parts, he uses his Devil Fruit ability to transport to an unknown place, which obviously worries our boy Dragon. Now, there are two places that I think that Kuma probably could have teleported to. So for one, we do know that Sabo rescued Kuma, and possibly in order to save our dear boy Sabo, who I don't think is dead, Kuma may be in a rush to go ahead and save him. And this will make sense because this would allow Sabo to reunite with the rest of the revolutionaries. Now on the other end, Kuma's daughter Bonnie could possibly be in trouble. Not really, because Luffy's there. But a reunion between the Straw Hats, Vegapunk, Bonnie, and the original Kuma could be very possible. But we cut back to Egghead to Luffy and Vegapunk. And Luffy from last chapter asks Vegapunk why does he want to leave Egghead. And Vegapunk elaborates this: I've been happy to spend every berry the government has given to fund my research. New ideas continue to pour out of me, of course. Unfortunately, I'm still limited by money and manpower. I preserve because I wish to change the world with my science. I want to make a world where free energy is available to all. Luffy, hilariously clueless, and responds by picking his nose. But the intelligent Jinbei helps to reiterate the matter and says that nations wage war over alternative energy sources. And Vegapunk agrees. And Vegapunk lets it be known that energy is seemingly all around us. If that raw power can be converted to a more apparent and accessible form, we never see another conflict spark up over it again. I'm certain science will make that possible someday. And Luffy is still confused and picking his nose. And basically Luffy responds that it's great and all that you want to make people happy, but I'm not in the business of being a hero. Which I believe is honestly a great line, because in essence Luffy at the end of the day is still a pirate. Even though a lot of the actions within the story, Luffy is more so seen as a hero to a lot of people from a lot of the places that he's gone to. So like I said, there is a little bit of a conflict with that statement, but at the same time Luffy doesn't see himself as a hero because he's more so interested in being a pirate. But Luffy's biggest confusion comes from the fact that why does Vegapunk need to leave Egghead? And Vegapunk says that the journey in order to discover a new energy source for all people, and ultimately it leads back to the ancient fuel that once powered the great Mecha from 200 years ago that tried to invade the Holy Land. As curious as Vegapunk is, he seems very frustrated that the Void Century history has been ripped from the annals of time. And the journey to find that truth has only led to suffering. For example, or horror. And even after the tragic death of Professor Clover, Vegapunk's curiosity has reached new heights into seeing the past of the One Piece world, and also carrying the will of his fallen friend, Professor Clover. Then out of nowhere we see a loud commotion coming from the distance. And Vegapunk frantically continues and says this: in short, I know too much, and now the government wants to erase me, just like O'Hara. We then see that Lucci and the rest of the occupants of the CP0 vessel have arrived on Egghead. We later see other workers of the laboratory for Vegapunk seem very confused at the arrival of CP0. Vegapunk number 4 gives Vegapunk number 1 an update and says that CP0 has bypassed the port, and explains that them sacrificing their ship only emboldens their resolve to fight. And this makes things extremely interesting because there's really no looking back for CP0. Their mission as of right now is to kill not only Vegapunk but also his clones, so I do want to kind of see what happens here. And whether or not that Luffy's there, their biggest agenda is simply just to kill or eliminate Vegapunk. And not only that, it could also play into the idea that CP0 might try to capture Bonnie in some kind of capacity. We do know that she was mentioned before Lucci and them landed actually in Egghead, so I do kind of see what happens there. Moving on, Vegapunk number 1, Shaka, actually gives the order to evacuate all the workers in the lab. And he also orders to deploy these 3 names: S-Snake, S-Hawk, and S-Shark. Now, I think we can already presume that these 3 codenames stand for Seraphim Boa, Seraphim Mihawk, and Seraphim Jinbei. Those 3 seraphims will protect Egghead. And not only that, we also get some details about something that I asked about before, but commanding them will be none other than Sentomaru, who we haven't seen since pre-time skip. And for this fact alone, I believe that Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy are very much going to surprise us in these next coming chapters. We cut back to Vegapunk and he's asking Luffy for permission to come along with him on the journey. And at first, Luffy says that this isn't a field trip, old timer. Very disrespectful. But then Luffy then agrees for Vegapunk to come along with the Straw Hats on the journey simply because Vegapunk has a funny looking head. Chopper in the background shouts, "You called that a screening process?" Vegapunk quickly digresses and says that they must leave quickly because Egghead will soon be a battlefield. And also says to make sure Bonnie accompanies them to the laboratory above the clouds. Then in a cool panel, out of nowhere, we see that Vegapunk is able to turn invisible right before Luffy and Chopper's eyes. Moving back to CP0, we see them being seemingly attacked by a monster. Some of the CP members realize that their weapons aren't working on the creature. Kaku, who was eager to fight, says he's always wanted to take a swing on an unworldly beast. And he uses his Tempest Kick. But Stussy, the other CP0 member, lets it be known, after the fact of course, that this is actually a hologram. And from the looks of it, it seems like Stussy may have some connection to Vegapunk, or she may be familiar with the island itself from before. And because she's some kind of relation between Vegapunk and Stussy possibly, or even Stussy and Bonnie, but like I said, that's just a wild take, but we'll see. Kaku again then hastily uses his Sky Walk. And he reaches a point beyond the clouds. Yet once you reach that point, a laser beam is triggered and Kaku learns this the hard way. Now even though Stussy knew this beforehand, she still lets Kaku get blasted by the laser beam, which is pretty funny. Stussy says to not underestimate the world's greatest scientists. But out of nowhere, we see Vegapunk Atlas engaging the CP0 agents. Shaka in a panic asks her not to engage them, but it is too late. As soon as she prepares attack, Lucci transforms into his hybrid zone form and uses one of his strongest attacks, Six King Pistol. Even Kaku lets it be known that Lucci is showing no mercy. We see the damage done to Vegapunk Atlas and it seems her head has exploded. We then cut to Jinbei and Luffy, who are headed towards the point of location that Vegapunk directed them to. And we finally get our long awaited reunion between Lucci and Luffy. Lucci saying Straw Hat and Luffy saying Penguin Guy. And that is the end of the chapter. And this is really hype because we can very well see a rematch of what happened in this lobby. And it's very possible that Luffy is going to pack up Lucci pretty easily. But I don't know, we'll see. I do feel like Lucci has a bag of his own that he's been working on since their last fight. Now, on a serious note, I do think that those seraphims that Shaka actually deployed, as well as Sentomaru, are going to engage Luffy, Kaku, and Stussy, and then probably going to give time for Luffy and the Straw Hats to go ahead and get away. So I think that's how everything's going to play out. That makes the most sense. Now, I will say this, Vegapunk Atlas, I do feel pretty bad. Her head exploded, but I will go ahead and say this. It is confirmed that she is still breathing, so we'll see what happens with that. But also, I do really want to see where is Kuma headed to. Is he headed to Egghead Island, or is he headed to go ahead and save Sabo from what it seems to be his impending doom? From that crazy blast done to the LUCCI Kingdom. But what do you guys think of the chapter? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Vinsmoke Benji channel and this chapter review. I love all of the love and the support. I'm gonna try to keep these up. But thank you so much. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.